What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video I'll be bringing you another endgame build, this time for the Hunting Horn. Now what is an endgame build? Well, it is a build that is constructed from some of the rarest weaponry, armor and decorations in the game. They also feature curious crafting as well as talismans, but the skills found on the curious crafting aren't to the extent where every single piece of armor features the absolute rarest of rare upgrades and augmentations. Now as always, if you find these videos helpful, informative or even entertaining, please consider leaving a like on the video as well as subscribing to the channel, as it really does help and allows me to bring you more videos for a variety of different playstyles. Now when it comes to the Hunting Horn in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, the weapon could be seen as being more streamlined than previous versions of it in other games. Love it or hate it, one thing that most people can agree on is it's more flashy and it's also capable of dealing a decent amount of damage. That being said, it's lost some of the complexity when it comes to its melodies. However, there is one melody that has always stood out to me, and that is Sonic Barrier. With its recent buff as well, with Title Update 5, Sonic Barrier is now a wonderful defensive skill not only for yourself, but for your entire team. And so with that, I present to you the Sonic Barrier Hunting Horn build. Like I said, this build is a mainly defensive build focused around the Sonic Barrier melody. But that being said, I haven't gone completely full on defense, as I am using quite a few offensive skills in the build, so we can still contribute to a team's overall damage output. So for this build you'll need the following pieces of armor. First of all, you'll need the Primordial Helm. You can replace this with the Tempest Helm if you so wish. Then gone for the Tempest Robes, Tempest Sleeves, the Omnio Ateobi and the Tempest Hakama. As for your Petalace, I'd recommend going for the Absolute Petalace for extra health, and for your talisman, everyone is going to have different talismans unfortunately, but try to get a talisman with as much weakness exploit on it as possible, as well as many tier 2 decorations. The talisman I'm using also has Part Breaker on, but to be honest, this is an optional skill. As for your weapon, you need a weapon that has access to the Sonic Barrier melody. Personally, I'd recommend the Devil's Loot, which is the Scorned Magnum Marlow Hunting Horn, as this also has decent sharpness, raw attack, decoration sockets, as well as an attack and defense up melody and a health regeneration melody. As for the curious crafting on it, simply go for increasing the weapon's raw attack. And so when it comes to the decorations, you have a lot to play around with. So first of all, I've gone for the Intrepid Heart decoration to max out Intrepid Heart, then gone for Jumping Jaws to max out Evade Extender. As for the Rampage decoration slot, go with one of the anti-species decorations. This can change depending on what monster you're going up against. I've then gone for Attack Jaws to max out Attack Boost, Expert Jaws to max out Critical Eye, Challenger Jaws to max out Agitator, a Sonorous Jaw for a point in Horn Maestro, an Inspiration Jaw for the Inspiration skill, a Hard Steadfast Jaw to max out Stun Resistance. This could be seen as optional, especially if you are playing in a group. If you're playing solo, however, Hard Steadfast Jaw is kind of needed. I've then gone for Emboldened Jaw to max out the Emboldened skill, a Chain Jaw for a point in the Burst skill, and then a Destroyer Jaw to max out Part Breaker. Although this one, again, could be seen as an optional jaw. So there is wiggle room if there is a certain skill that you desire that could be obtained through decorations. Anyway, moving on. If you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with a raw attack of 451 with a blast rating of 34. You'll also have a affinity rating of 40%, which can easily be 100% when we take into account weakness exploit and the agitator skill. And you also have a decent defense of 940 that is resistant to water, neutral against thunder, but unfortunately weak to the other elements. That being said though, this is if you're in the red scroll. Your stats will fluctuate a little bit more if you're in the blue scroll, as your blast rating will go up and your raw attack will go down. Anyway, as for the switch skills, I say these are always down to personal preference. However, Silkbind Shockwave I would always recommend taking. As for the rest, they're down to personal preference. I personally like to use Slide Beat, as it allows us another hyper armor ability for this already defensive Hunting Horn build. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you'll have Attack Boost at level 7. Attack Boost is a skill that increases the raw attack of a build, and at level 4 or above grants us a percentage bonus to that raw attack. You'll then have Critical Eye at level 7, increasing the base affinity of this build. You'll then have Agitator at level 5, which is a skill, a buff that kicks in whenever a monster becomes enraged. When this happens, you'll gain increased raw attack and base affinity, and this works well in unison with Emboldened, which we'll talk about in a moment. You'll then have Critical Boost at level 3, which is a skill that increases the damage of our attacks whenever they crit a monster. However, it only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental or element portion. You'll then have Weakness Exploit at level 3, which is a skill that increases our affinity by up to 50% at level 3 whenever we're attacking monster weak points. So long as we're accurate with our attacks, we should be able to maintain that 100% affinity. You'll then have Evade Extender at level 3, increasing the distance at which we dodge and evade. It's a very useful quality of life skill in Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak, but you can drop a few points in it here and there if you so desire. Anyway, next up is Stun Resistance at level 3, again another optional skill in all honesty. However, it becomes more useful and more valuable the fewer players you are playing with. So if you're playing solo, Stun Resistance is definitely advised. If you're playing multiplayer, you can normally get away without it. Next up is Part Breaker at level 3, again another optional skill, but it does work well in unison with Blood Right, which we'll talk about in a moment. Part Breaker is a skill that allows us to break monster body parts more easily. You'll then have Blood Right at level 3, which could be seen as a little bit of an optional skill in all honesty, but it is still a useful quality of life and defensive skill, as whenever we're attacking monster body parts that have been broken, a portion of the damage dealt to that monster body part will be used to heal our hunter. So Part Breaker allows us to break the monster body parts more easily, thus being able to take advantage of Blood Right more quickly and effectively during hunts. You'll then have Embolden at level 3, which is a skill that allows us to enrage a monster more easily, thus triggering the effects of Agitator more often. However, in return for enraging a monster more easily, we'll gain a massive increase to our defense, as well as increasing the iframes when we're dodging and evading. Next up is Heaven Sent at level 3, a wonderful skill in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Heaven Sent is a buff that kicks in whenever we've been fighting a large monster for a set duration of time and we've not taken any damage, after which a whirlwind will form around our hunter, indicating that Heaven Sent has activated, to which, should we take a hit from a monster when this is active, we'll take reduced damage and the knockback effect will be ignored. And on top of that, at level 3, it will nullify all stamina and sharpness consumption, allowing us to maintain that purple sharpness for long periods of time. Additionally as well, when performing skill swaps and going from red to blue scroll or blue to red scroll, it will allow us to recover some sharpness, again adding to our sharpness management. Anyway, next up you'll have Burst at level 2. It would have been nice to get this higher, but to be honest, this could be seen as an optional skill to some respect, but it's still a decent DPS skill that allows us to increase or gradually increase our raw attack as we continuously damage a monster. You'll then have Intrepid Heart at level 2, another wonderful quality of life and defensive skill that definitely lends itself to this build, as this gives our hunter an additional bar above our health bar. This bar will fill up blue as we land attacks on a monster, to which when it's full up, Intrepid Heart will kick in. Now the Intrepid Heart buff has two effects at level 2. Firstly, it allows us to ignore the first attack that hits our hunter that would knock our hunter back. And when I say ignore it, I mean ignore the damage reaction, so our hunter won't be interrupted at all. On top of that as well, the damage taken will be severely reduced, and on top of that at level 2, an explosion will occur on our hunter, dealing damage to the monster that hurt us. Anyway, next up is Horn Maestro at level 1, a hunt and horn only skill that improves the overall speed of performing songs, as well as the shockwave damage. You'll then have Knell of Hellfire at level 1. This could be seen as an optional skill, to be honest. Knell of Hellfire is a skill that, when we're using a red scroll, it will reduce our defense but increase our raw attack, and when using a blue scroll, it will reduce our resistances but increase our elemental attack. You can drop this skill in all honesty to give yourself more survivability, but the way Sonic Barrier works, coupled with our other skills, it's alright to have a point in this. Anyway, you'll then have Adrenaline Rush at level 1, which is kind of an optional skill, to which when you perform a perfectly timed evade and dodge as a monster attacks you, you'll gain increased raw attack. You'll then have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, again another optional skill to be honest, but it is a decent quality of life skill that I personally like to use a lot, especially on non-arena hunts, as during a hunt you'll receive the effects of random Spirit Birds at fixed intervals, reducing the need slightly for you to go out of your way to find Spirit Birds as they will come to you. And then finally you'll have Inspiration at level 1, a new skill added to the game with the last title update that adds an extra attack increase bonus for a short while after activating effects that buff friends within a certain target area. This does include Hunting Horn melodies, so the Hunting Horn can definitely make advantage of the Inspiration skill. So those are all the skills to the Sonic Barrier build. Now as you can see how this works, it's a case of playing the Sonic Barrier song as often as possible to reduce the damage and negate the damage reactions of incoming monster attacks. However, if Sonic Barrier isn't active at the time, then potentially Intrepid Heart will take the hit, allowing you to ignore the damage reaction and reduce the damage taken, and should that fail, then you also have Heaven Sent to reduce the damage that way. So you have multiple layers of damage reduction and damage reaction negation with this build, with Sonic Barrier being your main front line and being able to almost spam it constantly. Using the Scorn Magna Marlow Hunting Horn, the rotation I would advise is to play the Sonic Barrier, so you play your blue notes twice, then you would play a red note, then the blue notes twice again to reactivate and refresh the Sonic Barrier, then your green notes, and then go into your Magnificent Trio before rinsing and repeating. Of course, you can perform other Silk Bind attacks in between that, such as the Slide Beat to give yourself more hyper armor to ignore the damage reaction of incoming monster attacks, but that is the main rotation I would recommend. But of course these are endgame builds, so they do feature Krios crafting. However, like I said, it's not to the extent where all the Krios crafting found on the armor is the absolute rarest. So for the Primordial Helm, I've got a point in Mail of Hellfire, which, like I said, is an optional skill. For the Tempest Robe, I've got a tier 2 decoration slot upgrade. For the Tempest Sleeves, I've got a reduction in the latent power skill and a point in the attack boost skill. For the Omnio Ateobi, I've got a tier 4 decoration slot upgrade, as well as a point in the Spirit Bird core skill. And then for the Tempest Hakama, I've got a point in the Evade extender skill. But every build out there has various pros and cons. No build is absolutely perfect. Even these endgame builds, while they may be strong and powerful, they may have downsides and cons in that they're difficult to craft or have certain health drain aspects. Now, when it comes to this Sonic Barrier Hunting Horn build, its biggest pro is its defensive capabilities, and not through just stacking defense boost. The amount of barriers you can put up, as well as other abilities to negate damage reactions, allows this build to power through and hyper armor through a lot of incoming monster attacks, allowing you to continue your assault against all but the hardest hitting of monster attacks. On top of that, this build also has decent damage output. Whilst not the best and not the highest, it's still able to take down monsters in a relatively quick time. It also can be used against any monster you come across, as it's focusing on raw attack rather than elements or ailments. And then finally for this build, when it comes to the pros, is that this build does not have to worry about sharpness whatsoever. Thanks to Heaven Sent, you're easily able to manage your sharpness or prevent sharpness loss altogether. But there are cons. The two major cons for this build include the fact that should you hyper armor through enough attacks and you don't have stun resistance, you risk leaving yourself vulnerable. And the other con for this build is, unfortunately, this build can sometimes give you a false sense of security, making you a little bit overconfident when it comes to taking on a monster. So sometimes you think you can take the hit, but you should have backed off instead. So always keep this in mind when using this build. But regardless, if you're looking for a decent build that not only is great at supporting yourself and a team, giving yourself increased defense, whilst at the same time still being able to deal damage to a monster, then I would strongly recommend this build. It's fun, and it's normally my go-to build for helping other players take on the tough quests in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another endgame build, this time for the Hunting Horn in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed it, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.